What's good, everybody? Welcome into the Midstate 48 for week 3 of the high school football season in Middle Tennessee. And I hear Scott Burton already. This thing's going off the rails. Scott Burton, Tom Duggan, guys, how are you?
How you doing? Sorry, I dropped something.
I thought he'd been in the laughing gas already.
It's not like one of those cold opens in the office, but it's all right.
No, look, I dropped something. I went to pick it up, and I was like, I looked up on the screen and said, okay, Chris is up there by himself. We're good.
Yeah.
And evidently, Chris just
you thought you had more time than you actually did. That's what that was, right?
Yeah,
okay.
That's what it was. Yeah.
I'm trying to give you an out here, Scott. I mean, wait, at least let me do that.
Actually, I was looking for a lens cleaner.
Oh,
for my glasses.
Okay. All right.
Dropped it somewhere in that. Anyway.
Well, anyway, let's get started. Lots to cover on the show this week. We talk about week 2, some of the couple of games that we were at. Plenty that came out of week 2, mostly good, some not so good, but we'll cover it anyway. So let's jump right in. Scott, you were at Nashville Christian, our Fans' Choice Game of the Week. And they've hosted Good Pasture. Now, that one turned out to be a pretty interesting deal, didn't it?
Yeah, it actually was a fairly good game and a little bit closer than what the score indicated. Nashville Christian jumped up on top early, but it was really the story of just mistakes on punt returns on special teams. Really was the death knell for the Cougars. 2 returns by Donovan Smith. Really at the beginnings of each each half, really was the difference there. There was a point. It was 17-14, and Good Pasture had a chance. They actually threw a pass down to Henderson, got inside the 10. Looked like they're going to have a chance to actually take the lead, but it got called back for a penalty, and that was kind of the story all night. It was just penalties by Good Pasture, opportune taking advantage of mistakes by Nashville Christian. Really wasn't a real power game, just as much as it was really just Nashville Christian doing all the things right, and really just pounding the ball at Good Pasture. There, I tell you what, this defensive line of Nashville Christian is no joke. No joke whatsoever. Humes and Bradley, those guys up front are beasts. And Good Pasture really just couldn't get anything going on the ground.
Yeah, it seemed like Nashville Christian had some success stopping the run, especially up front. We talk about Nashville Christian as one of those teams that can be a Division II single A contender this year. What do you think about them going up maybe against like DCA later on? I mean, is this the type of team that can probably make that kind of run?
I think it's the team that can make that kind of run as long as the defense continues playing the way they do. Offensively, they need to do a few things a little bit better. I think they need to open the holes up, run the ball a little bit better. Quarterback can throw. They made some plays throwing the ball that got them out of some trouble. So I think, yeah, they can make a run at DCA, but boy, they're going to have to play some tight defense and kind of tighten up their offense.
I want to talk a little bit, Scott, while you're mentioning them, about Tyler Morris, who I believe he maybe ran for like 60 yards, threw for 43 yards and a touchdown. What did you get from Morris out of that game as far as the impact he had overall?
Well, really, to me, the impact that Morris had more than anything was he had good leadership, made good decisions. And I think that was, really his game. He did Good Pasture did a good job of trying to keep him in control and not let him get too far outside the pocket. But he had a couple of good runs, kept the clock going, kept moving the chains. The one touchdown pass he had to Satterfield was right on the money. So yeah, he's a good, solid quarterback.
Certainly a solid win for Nashville Christian heading into region play starting this week. Another one that we had, I actually was up in Clarksville for the first time. I've been up there for a long time with an old rivalry with Springfield and Clarksville, one of the state's oldest rivalries actually. and Springfield kind of pulled away in the fourth quarter. They won 27-10. Big night for Devin Crenshaw, Springfield quarterback. Ran for 3 touchdowns and threw for another. And both these teams, they run the ball, a lot of wing tee stuff. They wanted to establish themselves physically early and often. Springfield really did that most of the night and came away with a 17-point win. The thing I was impressed about, Springfield they've lost some people on offense, but it seemed like that offensive line was more than willing to take charge and kind of stick it to Clarksville's defense, which was a little bit undermanned. They had several kids out due to injuries and illness and whatnot, but really impressed with Crenshaw, really impressed with Springfield, and it was a big night for them on the road in the big rivalry game. And they've got another important one this week that we'll talk about later on.
Well, Chris, you were talking about the Clarksville defense, the Clarksville offense, and they lost their quarterback that was a Garinger at the beginning of the season due to a labrum injury to his shoulder that he got playing baseball. So they've been kind of hampered, right, on the offensive side.
They really have, and Rayshawn Bowling was under center for them on Friday, and he had a long touchdown run, but mostly bottled up a lot of the night. These two teams, they struggled to run it for a little while just because it was basically what they wanted to do against each other. But Clarksville still trying to find their identity, I guess. I mean, they know what they want to do, but with so many kids still out, until they kind of get toward full strength a little bit more, it's going to be hard for them to kind of establish that identity going forward.
Yeah, I was concerned about how they were going to, with all those questions going around their offense, how they were going to fare in that region.
Chris, I wanted to bring up Springfield's defense after they shut out Greenbrier in week 1. They get ready to go into region play, got Northeast this week, a big game for them. Talk about what you saw from them on the defensive side of the ball.
They largely were able to bottle Clarksville up for a while. There were a couple of big plays. The long Bowling touchdown was a 65-yarder. He kind of broke loose and got free there. And they had a 40-yard halfback pass later in the second half. But other than that, there weren't many chunk plays against them. They were pretty solid up front and very sound and as far as not taking penalties too. I mean, this was a game that was fairly clean from that standpoint. Unlike week 1, I think Springfield had 10 or 12 penalties in week 1. They only had 5 this week. So a big improvement in that department. Dustin Wilson really happy about that. So, when they get into this week against Northeast, which we'll talk about a little later on, really important for them to kind of keep establishing that identity of what they were both offensively and defensively. Tom, you didn't have a game last week. In fact, you have actually a new gig, and tell us a little bit about that, if you will.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've gone to work at Stonecom. I'm actually back in radio for the first time in about 12 years. So knocking off a lot of rust, and wasn't available to go to any games last week for our coverage area. Unfortunately, got to look at Livingston, Cookeville last week, and up in the Upper Cumberland region, of course. And Cookeville's a team we're going to be talking about playing Lebanon, but certainly Cookeville bounced back nicely after a week 1 loss to Upperman. But surprisingly, Livingston Academy, a very young team there, first-year head coach in Dale Flatt, and some growing pains, only I think 3 seniors on that team. And Chris, they're not able to play at home this year. On top of that, they've been playing their home games at Tucker Stadium at Tennessee Tech. So with the new gig, I'll be covering some sports in the Upper Cumberland area. Hope to be helping you guys out some as well. So that'll give me about 2/3 of the state to kind of keep an eye on in high school football. It's going to keep me busy for sure.
You are going to be busy, man, that's for sure. And Livingston really should take a page out of Hillsborough's playbook, because as we saw, they've spent the last 3 years basically being nomads and not having a home field. They're going to have their first home game since 2017 this week against Smyrna. We'll talk about that one in just a little bit. Some other things that came out of week 2. Unfortunate incident at Lipscomb Academy. There was a video, a TikTok, where Trent Dilfer was seen, having a little bit of an altercation with Bo Dawson, one of his senior leaders. And it made the rounds. It went viral. A lot of people have weighed in on this. I want you guys to weigh in on what you saw and what you thought of it when you first were able to see the video.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, it's unfortunate. And unfortunately, in today's time, something like that is going to draw the ire of people all across the country. And this is not something, because it is Trent Dilfer, that's just been isolated to Middle Tennessee. Unfortunately, this has been made its rounds all across the country. And you're going to get differences of opinions about this. Guys that played football that had the tough coaches, that did yell at them, that did grab the face mask, they're going to say, well, yeah, that's what coaches are supposed to do. But then you're going to have that other section of people that are not going to like it. He should be berating a player like that. He should have acted like that. I will give Coach Dilfer some credit. He did come out. He did own up for it. Give him credit for that. And he apologized for it. I think he felt like he did overreact. I think he wanted to try to explain what exactly did happen out there. It's a tough situation, but guys, as we all know, we're in a day and age that, coaches, unfortunately, they've really got to be watching what they're doing at all times. And I know you want to be emotional and you want to be able to get onto your players when you need to, but you just got to be careful in how you do it.
Yeah, and I think that was probably the most disappointing thing, and probably disappointed Trent Dilfer more than anything. I've seen the wrath of a Trent Dilfer rant. He really does care about those kids. He loves those kids to death, and he's tough on them, and he demands a lot from them. That being said, it is a different time. I mean, as somebody who had his share of face masks yanked and smacks upside the head, which probably explains quite a bit. I understand that. Don't necessarily agree with it, but I do understand that that may have been the way that somebody was coached up and somebody was brought up. But this is a different day and age, and you have to be aware of. And it's not a matter of you having to be aware that there are cameras. It's just a different day and age on all sorts of fronts, and we've got to be better. And I think Trent's holding himself accountable for that. I think that that he came out and apologized and acknowledged that, hey, I was wrong. And this is a good kid. He had a high motor. I had a high motor, and things got out of hand. As things go, I've seen a lot worse, but that's really, you've got to be smarter than that, and realize, that it's just not the way that coaches should be, correcting kids these days.
Yeah, I've had a chance to see the video several times, and you guys are right. I mean, this is a day and age where the line is constantly moved more toward not being able to put your hands on a kid like that. And, credit Dilfer for getting out in front of this and owning up to it. And my main thing is this, is if it's a one-time incident, I certainly disagree with the he should be fired crowd, because we tend to overreact a lot to a lot of things, especially on social media, and especially in something like a TikTok that doesn't have the necessary context to explain how this started. If we're in a court of law, we're obviously going to ask that question. But since we're not, we have to go on what we know. And the people that were at Lipscomb Academy that night know more than we do, and definitely know more than what that video showed. But here's the thing. If it's a one-time thing, I'm okay with it. But if it's a pattern that starts developing, then we've got to start asking some hard questions. But since there's a one-time thing right now, well, let's get over it and let's move on. He was acknowledged that he was wrong. My main thing is, does that hurt the team, or do they get over it and get past this and keep moving forward? And if that's the case, then maybe everybody comes away from this learning something, and that's what we can take away from it. It's not a great situation. Certainly shouldn't have happened, but it's a teaching moment for everybody involved. And that's why I take away from it the most.
And Chris, I totally agree with you. I don't agree with the fire Dilfer crowd. Again, it's a one-time incident. If you went to Bo Dawson and asked him if he thought Coach Dilfer should be fired, I guarantee you he'd say no. And I don't think a member of that team would probably say they want their coach fired. He coaches with passion, enthusiasm. Yeah, it got a little overheated, and he's going to have to be more careful. But, it's too soon to be talking about that, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's going to be a heavy scrutiny on him going forward. But I think it's probably a good thing, and kind of helps him refine how he deals with those types of situations.
Right. I mean, again, Chris, very well said. Very well said. If it's a one-time thing, you got your emotions got the better of you. If it becomes, as you said, more of a problem, you start to see consistency with it. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I think that 100%. I agree with you guys. I'm sure he does far more good for those kids than this one incident will let on. But spotlight's on him now, and he knows it, and I think he welcomes the challenge of being better. I mean, it's all about getting better and learning.
Yeah, pretty well said, and good that we were able to touch on that briefly in this show. Another item that came out of this week, and one that has a slightly local angle to it, the whole Bishop Sycamore saga continues. It's been documented a couple of days ago. They were on ESPN, basically duping ESPN into getting a nationally televised game with some shady practices that have been very highly reported on. And the reporters that have done the work on this have done an excellent job of just digging and finding the things that have really made this story what it is. It's unbelievable that in this day and age, something like this could happen in high school football, because we're in an age where information is a boundless amount on the internet, and yet this team somehow kept themselves unknown enough that ESPN could not figure out that they were not a highly ranked team.
And that's where I want to go first and foremost. Shame on you, ESPN, for not doing your homework. With the money, the contacts, and the resources, and the history that ESPN has, shame on them, guys. If you don't know that this Bishop Sycamore team has really no background, that all this information you've been fed, is I'm sorry, just bovine scatology, basically, then that's on ESPN. I mean, guys, first and foremost, I don't blame Bishop Sycamore. Hey, they probably got a nice payday out of it. Whether they end up getting paid or not after all this scandal, who knows? But to me, this falls right back on ESPN. And hey, somebody didn't do their homework, just plain and simple.
Well, it's lazy is what it is. Is because what you did was you hired out a company to line up ball games for you, and this is ESPN. This is sports network programming. This is stuff that you should have people doing inside ESPN. You shouldn't be farming it out. Whenever you contract something out, mistakes can be made because these guys are just marketers. And while we're talking about marketers, let's talk about how good of a marketing job Bishop Sycamore did selling a non-existent program. But I think this truthfully comes back to something that's even worse. And what it is IMG holds a little bit of responsibility here. They played them already once and crushed them. They should have been the first to speak up and said, really, you want to put us against them? Because no, IMG is part, in my opinion, IMG is part of the problem. What you have here is you have a bunch of schools created for the sole purpose of football and sports of just about any kind. It goes back to, Nike camps and things of that nature. What you don't have, these are not student athletes. These are athletes that just happen to go to, in Bishop Sycamore's case, they all go to the coach's house or wherever they can stay for the night before the check runs out. But, to me, it's just indicative of a problem within some of those sports when you start talking about pay for play type of things like Bishop Sycamore, IMG. But to go back to this particular case, Tom, I agree with you. ESPN needs a slap on the wrist or upside the head. And they certainly need to split ways with, I think Paragon is the name of the marketing company they were using. And maybe, just maybe, keep one or two of their people around to, maybe do a little bit of an investigation. It's not hard to open up USA Today and see who the high school, the top high schools are out there. And, heaven forbid, ask a sports writer.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. I mean, I am more disappointed in ESPN's response to this than anything else, because they've simply passed the buck. They've not taken responsibility for this at all. And it's disgusting, to be honest with you. I mean, we talked about accountability with Trent Dilfer, and then here's ESPN going off saying, no, it's their fault. We had nothing to do with it. Well, yeah, you did, because you were the ones that hired Paragon to put them in the game anyway.
Yep.
So
right.
I don't want to hear about passing the buck. It is your fault, ESPN, and shame on you, and double shame on you, actually. So that's all I got to say about that. It's just a bizarre story. It's fun to see what's coming up about them. I mean, it's such a story that you don't hear about, all that often. And yet in this day and age,
Well, there's a 30 for 30 in the works.
It needs to be. ESPN can do us a solid and get a 30 for 30 on that. We might forgive them.
You got to give it 20 years for that to happen, though. So.
I think so. Another thing that has come out so far, COVID is rearing its ugly head again this week. We had, I think, 30 cancellations statewide last week. We recorded this on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, and as of the start of this recording, there were 24 such cancellations statewide for week 3. So that number only looking to go up, unfortunately. And some of the games that have area implications, Laverne at Antioch, Sequatchie County at Cannon County, Lipscomb Academy at Good Pasture, Pearl Cone at Hillwood, which would have been played Thursday night. They're not going to play this week either. And Oakland at Stewart's Creek. Now, you do say, hey, Oakland and Lipscomb Academy are not playing, and the cases are not with them. So we could be looking at a potential powerhouse matchup. Cross your fingers. Maybe Oakland and Lipscomb Academy hook up this week. Trent Dilfer's on board. He's already tweeted that out. So we'll see. But to the games that are going to be on the field, let's start with the game, Scott, that you'll be at in Hendersonville, the battle for Drake's Creek between Beach and Hendersonville. This is a rivalry going back to Beach's beginning in the early 80s, and always one of those rough and tumble crosstown rivalry games that, quite honestly, usually comes down to special teams.
Yeah, I was going to say special teams, they seem to be continuing to be a problem for Hendersonville. At Oakland, they snapped the ball over the punter's head. And against South Warren, they allowed a kickoff return for a TD and a long punt return that could have cost them. So, again, it's special teams seems to be an area that Hendersonville continues to have trouble with. That being said, their defensive front is capable of creating havoc for the Buccaneer running game and force them to the air. If they can capitalize on a turnover too, they could pull a mild upset. But Beach has a good defense too, and the passing and running game to boot. So it's going to be a really interesting game, I think. But Hendersonville is going to have to be on top of their game, I think, to beat Beach.
Yeah, and honestly, Beach's defense has been the story the first couple of weeks, only giving up 7 points to Farragut, only giving up 7 points to Henry County. They've been on top of things on the defensive side of the ball the first 2 games against a couple of pretty good opponents.
Well, Bronco Hanks is back, and in a couple of games he's got 15. He's got 17 total tackles. He's got a pick and a sack already on the season. So he's already, he's back, and their defensive backs are pretty good back there. So Luke Manning's going to have his work cut out for him.
Yeah, I was going to say that Beach defense has been impressive first 2 games, and their 2 opponents have been pretty tough as well. Of course, Hendersonville played Oakland. It doesn't get much tougher than that. But, can Hendersonville, can they move the ball? Can Ellis have a good game against this Beach defense? I think it's going to be pivotal for Hendersonville. But guys always like to say it, factor the rivalry into it, because sometimes you get in a big rivalry game and guys step their game up to another level, and anything could go in this one on Friday night, I think.
Yeah, and especially considering this is a region game and these 2 teams are going to be fighting for region title. I mean, there's higher stakes in this game than there usually are. Mm-hmm. So just another factor to think about this. So I could certainly see this being a low-scoring game. Beach doesn't give up a ton of points. Hendersonville's had some trouble offensively against better defenses. So, I mean, it could be a lower-scoring game, but I think it stays fairly close, and we'll talk about the game and who you got in just a bit. EGA at CPA is up next. And CPA, well, I mean, they're getting the job done. Brentwood Academy had them on the ropes. They came back and won it, and their defense actually sealed that game late with a big stop. So, EGA has to come in here thinking, they've got to play a pretty solid game to stay in this and have a shot to win it, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if any team has the ability to match CPA in points, it's going to be BGA, but they're going to need help. CPA right now is on top of their game. They are right now king of the mountain until somebody knocks them off. But that being said, CPA can make mistakes, and BGA will need to capitalize on that. If it's a shootout, it could be anybody's game.
I was going to say that BGA defense giving up 33 points through the first two games. Now, again, they played Nolensville and they played Ravenwood. Those are two teams not to sneeze at. But, again, as you point out, they've scored a lot of points in those two games as well. So, Brett Brown at quarterback and Sean Williams, they hope to step their game up against CPA. And I don't think CPA, and I probably undersold Brentwood Academy, unfortunately, a little bit last week in their matchup. They really held their own and gave CPA all they wanted, but I expect CPA, I bet they've had a pretty good, tough week of practice this week. I think we may see a different level of focus out of them in this game, but they better not be caught napping because BGA can put some points up.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing to take away from this, I think, is being a region game. You can't overlook these because these determine your playoff fate. So, Ingle Martin's team will be ready for this game, and they'll be ready for whatever BGA decides to throw at them. I mean, they may have to throw the kitchen sink at them to stay in this and keep it close, but who knows? BGA's been pretty good in the first couple of weeks, and this one has a chance to be fairly close in this one. Dekalb County, Macon County, another tough region game that's going to have major implications down the line in Class 4A. These two teams fought for a region championship last year, but with the addition of Upperman, this now seems like a number 2 spot instead of a region title. Guys, let's weigh in on this one real quick. Macon's at home again like they were last year. Maybe a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth from last October, right?
Yeah, I think it could very well be. I think it's going to be a knockdown drag-out just like it was last year. And, guys, a fun fact here, these two teams have met every year since 1991. In fact, this is the longest current streak of games against any one opponent Dekalb County has currently going. This rivalry now stretching about 30 consecutive years. So, during that time, I even myself personally have witnessed both teams, blowing out the other. But most of the time, this is a knockdown drag-out. And I think this is a Dekalb County team that a lot of people may have looked at on paper, losing their quarterback and Axel Aldino last year, that maybe they wouldn't be as competitive. But they brought back the majority of a very big offensive line. And Briz Trapp, the sophomores, look pretty good at the quarterback thus far. Macon County, though, I love the experience they have under center with Brady Brooks, and he's got a great weapon out there in Cameron Houston. I tell you what, in Macon County, to me, they look pretty good defensively in the chance I got to see them in the preseason. So a lot on the line here. You mentioned, Chris, that it may be for number 2 because Upperman has looked so very good right now. But the winner of this game still puts themselves in the driver's seat to have a chance to win the region championship.
Well, I want to bring up maybe one of the bigger Tiger hunters out there, and it's Isaac Knowles. Wide receiver, he's got 9 receptions, 159 yards, and a TD, but he also has 171 yards in return yards. And he's a very speedy back wide receiver. And I think that Trapp is going to look for him up the seam. So Macon County defenders can't lose track of where Knowles is because he'll either be up the seam or behind him. I think Macon's going to try to control the line of scrimmage. I think they're going to try to keep running the ball, and they do a great job with Coulter and Clariday. And so I think this is going to be, as you said, a knockdown, drag-out fight, and may come down to the last one with the ball.
You mentioned.
I'm sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you mentioned Knowles. Don't forget he's an excellent player in the secondary as well. I mean, this is a kid that'll play every play if you put him out there. It might be an interesting matchup. We might see him on Cam Houston quite a bit in the game Friday night. That would certainly be an interesting matchup between the two.
We talked about Macon County possibly being a more of a throwing team this year. That has not been the case the first couple of weeks. They've been largely a running team trying to set up the pass when it's been there. But really, they kept it on the ground the first 2 games. And last week against West Point was a knockdown, drag-out game, a 14-7 win. Mm-hmm. So they're already in these physical rivalry games that are kind of key to their season right now. So I think when they come into this game, they're going to be ready for what they expect to be a physical kind of a ground fest between these two teams. So be interesting to see what comes out of that one if Macon can avenge their loss to the Cat from last year. East Nashville and Stratford, a 3A region showdown between the two teams that I kind of think might be 1 and 2 in this region. So we kind of see early on where these two teams might fall. East Nashville didn't get to play last week. Unfortunately, they're 0-1 after their loss to Father Rhino week 1. Stratford took it on the chin against Overton as well. So both these teams kind of have a little bad taste in their mouth coming into this one, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that right now it's kind of hard to see where East Nashville is, just simply because they had the one bad game against Father Ryan before they were derailed by COVID. Um, Truthfully, I think that Father Ryan is maybe a little bit better than what I anticipated at the beginning of the year. It may have been a first week hangover. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they bounce back with a week off, playing against Stratford. I think Jamal Stewart's going to have to see a little bit more from their offense than Zach Beard. But their defense is still really good. They were able to get 3 turnovers against Father Ryan. Just couldn't do anything with them.
Yeah, and you look at Stratford, this is a team that, last year they had a lot of speed. They lost a lot of that during the offseason, but they're still good at offensive line, and they've got a pretty good quarterback in Keelan Jenkins, who's an outstanding athlete. And, Chris, you mentioned this might be the battle for 1 and 2. Some folks looked at Smith County as factoring into that. Smith County with a first-year head coach, they've struggled a little bit out of the gate, so I'm kind of on board with that line of thinking right now that this game may determine the region championship between these two. But, East Nashville, how are they going to bounce back after a COVID week? A lot of teams are going to have to start answering that question. And for some teams, and I'll give you an example, in Warren County, they're likely not to even start their season until week 4. How will these postponements, cancellations, whatever they may be, how are they going to affect these teams when they do have to come back and get back on the gridiron?
Yep. With so many already being canceled as it is, I mean, it's just upending. We're seeing a repeat of 2020, unfortunately, as far as the cancellations are concerned. But they have learned from last year, so they've got at least that database of info that they can lean on to get through those cancellations and whatnot, and hopefully, keep their teams on the field as much as possible. Father Ryan at JP2, the battle for the Bishop's Cup, and a big rivalry game between these two teams that are playing pretty well early in the year, and this is going to be a fascinating game, I think.
Yeah, guys, I like this game, and I'll tell you why. In the preseason prognostications, these two teams were kind of picked on the bubble of even making the playoffs, but I think JP2 and Father Ryan both have played excellent out of the gate, both 2-0 thus far. Father Ryan, the wins, of course, we mentioned East Nashville won at Brentwood last week. I thought Brentwood would go home and maybe bounce back in their first home game after that disheartening loss at Blackman. But Father Ryan wasn't having any of that. And JP2, good win over Hillsboro, and they beat Pure Youth Alliance. Not too familiar with that one last week. But Father Ryan, they've been on a roll in the regular season. Going back to last year, and I know it's kind of apples and oranges in high school ball from one season to the next, but there's some momentum going, at least with the program, that they've won 8 of the last 10 games. The quarterback, Matthew Derrick, has been playing well. JP2, they've got some experience up front. They've got some experience in the receiving corps. And Kevin Minchie is a quarterback we've mentioned quite a bit, but, quietly, I think Minchie could go out there and just have a fantastic season. I think this is going to be an excellent game, and I think one or both of these teams have a real legit shot of making the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I'm a little I'm still a little on the fence with Father Ryan, and strictly because they rolled up 346 yards of total offense against Brentwood, despite having 12 penalties. Yeah, and where Brentwood had only 4. Of course, they turned the ball over 3 times, but their defense held Brentwood to a first down rushing, and they were amazing 4-for-4 on fourth down, and gave up 14 yards on 16 carries. This team had 3 turnovers also against East Nashville, so there's room for mistakes there to be made, and I think that I was thinking that that a Brentwood would take would be able to take advantage of that. They were able to fight through them. So I was thinking the same thing with Pope John Paul II, but it's kind of hard to say. This Father Ryan team just seems to find ways to win. That being said, I think that that JP2 is they are not a one-dimensional team, but Kenny Minchie is the real deal at quarterback.
Yeah, well, the good thing about Division II AAA is that everybody actually makes the playoffs this year. So the playoff seeding isn't going to be is the bigger idea instead of making it to the playoffs. But
see, I told you I thought one or both would make the playoffs.
There you go. One thing they don't have to worry about this year, but with the changes in Division II AAA. But with these two teams, obviously the rivalry is heated. But I think JP2 with Kenny Minchie quarterback and Colin Cook out there at receiver, and they've got so many weapons out there that they're going to put up the points. Can Father Ryan match it? That's my biggest question this week. Indy and Centennial are next. Two teams with very different starts. Independence 0-2 after a couple of really tough losses to some really good teams. Centennial 2-0 hasn't a lot of point yet, but their strength of schedule leaves a little bit desired. So is this a bounce back for Indy, or does Centennial continue its winning ways?
Well, that's a good question, right? I mean, how is Independence as bad as what they've looked, or is Centennial a paper tiger? That's a really good question. I like Independence. I think that they've played, a really hard schedule so far, and it has showed, and it's all about honing your craft, especially when you're replacing some good players. But don't sleep on Centennial. They're coming out with a purpose, and they're true believers now. So it's going to be really interesting to see how quickly what happens if Centennial jumps out in front early. How does Independence react?
At Independence, I CPA and Lipscomb the first 2 weeks. I mean, who wants to play that schedule? That's as tough as it gets. But as far as Centennial goes, like you mentioned, Chris, they've not allowed a point. And Josh Forsey, Josh Forsey, he looked good in the preseason. He's carried it over into the regular season again. The competition level may not be up, certainly not to the level Independence has played. But I think Centennial's got a lot of confidence right now. And boy, Forsey, he runs hard. He's a good football player.
Yeah, for me, Independence's schedule, I mean, it's going to serve them well later on in the year, but they're going to have to get some confidence back and fast, because if they go 0-3 losing to Centennial, that's not good, for considering that their region hopes lie on beating the Cougars. So, no, big game for Independence. Centennial playing with house money at this point. Smyrna Hillsboro. We mentioned Hillsboro back in its home stadium for the first time since 2017. Big night for the Burros. Smyrna's trying to come in and spoil that game, but Hillsboro's been off to a pretty rough start.
Yeah, guys, I don't know what to make of either one of these teams, to be honest. Smyrna got the win over Stewart's Creek to open the season, then COVID last week, and so they have to sit out a week. Small roster this year. They got some inexperience up front. They do have a good quarterback, of course, Landon Miller, the 3-year starter. Hillsboro, kind of shocked to see them lose to Station Camp, but then again, you look at Station Camp, and they're 2-0 thus far on the season. Hillsboro's strength was supposed to be the defense this year. Of course, they played JP2 in week number 1 and gave up 49 in that game. And, of course, again, kind of a head-scratcher with Station Camp. So both of these teams right now, I just don't really have a great feel for either one.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about Smyrna. That first game they played against Stewart's Creek, that could have been a different result had Stewart's Creek not lost their primary weapon, but they did, and Smyrna was able to win it. Hillsboro, they get to go home, and at a time they, desperately need something to celebrate. But the thing that worries me about Hillsboro is that they have allowed opponents a really fast start. They were down 49-7 at the half against JP2. They get down 18-0 against Station Camp. And they don't seem to be able to claw back in it. Their offense doesn't seem to be able to allow them to get back into the game. I really worry about this Hillsboro team, about where they are mentally. Again, this is, you would think that this game is going to mean everything to them on their new field. And we really don't know, Tom, to your point, we really don't know 100% about Smyrna yet. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, I think.
Yeah. With not a lot of Smyrna film from this season so far, Hillsboro has a little bit to worry about, but that home field is going to matter a lot to them. And I think we can see a very close game in this one, just because of the emotion and the energy that they're going to bring on their home field for the first time. Springfield and Northeast, this is a televised game this week. Northeast coming off an inexplicable shutout loss to Montgomery Central last week. Springfield, as we noted, beat Clarksville 27-10. Guys, a key region game for these two teams. one of them is going to have a shot at Henry County. Which one might it be?
Springfield. I think Springfield's going to have a shot at Henry County. I think they're playing. And Chris, you brought it up earlier when you were going over last week's game. Dustin Wilson is his attention to detail, his ability to get the most out of his players brings a lot. I can't explain the Northeast loss to not only the loss, but not being able to score against Montgomery Central. I know they moved the ball quite a bit, but they couldn't punch it through. They're going to have to get out in front on Springfield, and they're going to have success throwing the ball. It's what they do well. Jaden Puig's a good quarterback. He loves to throw the ball. He's got weapons in Fort and he's got another one. But Tykees Blanton, that's who he is. He's got weapons there in those two guys. So they're going to have to get out in front early and then try to stay there to get out and have success against Springfield.
And I think that's what's going to be the toughest thing for Northeast is getting out in front of Springfield because of the way Springfield's defense has played thus far this season. And again, the struggles last week against Montgomery Central. If Northeast, it's good to move the ball up and down the field, but they've got to find a way to put some points on the board, and it's going to be tough against that Springfield team. And let's not forget how well Devin Crenshaw's been playing for Springfield thus far. It's a big game, though, and the winner, I think, does have a real legit shot with Henry County.
The one thing that Northeast cannot afford to do is fall behind because they're not going to get many chances to score the way Springfield's ball control was last week. And if they keep that up, then this could be a real short game just like it was last week as well. So that's one thing for Northeast to keep in mind. You better be able to get in front and make Springfield play from behind. Nobody's done that yet. So the question for them is, can they keep pace or get in front early? I don't know if they can or not. We'll see.
And how is I'm sorry, Chris. Keontae Woodard, the running back for Springfield. I don't know how injured if he'll be back this week because that'll be a key for Springfield.
Yeah, a lot of Crenshaw last week because of that, but we'll see how that shakes out for them. Summit at Brentwood, our next to last game of the list. We didn't see Summit last week because Spring Hill had COVID. Summit couldn't find a game. Brentwood, the last we saw them, Father Ryan had put them out in week 2. So, critical game for these two teams in region play, and Brentwood needs it probably for, if nothing else, confidence.
Yeah, I agree. They've lost these first 2 games, and I was at that game at Blackman when you really felt the momentum squarely with Brentwood in that fourth quarter, and they get 2 key fumbles. Blackman makes them pay in a late interception. Just a heartbreaking way to lose, and then they come back last week. Father Ryan with the 26-13 win. So Brentwood, let's not forget, they were the Class 6A runner-up last year. So confidence may be waning a little bit with them. But again, they got Summit. They're another team. They're loaded with talent, but they're coming off a COVID week. How are they going to respond to that? I think, 2 things working against both teams. Who responds to their adversity the most probably wins this game Friday night.
Yeah, I'm still kind of concerned about Brentwood and are they still trying to figure out who they are? The question is that they had trouble running the ball. They had great success the first game with Blackman, but then had all kinds of trouble running it against Father Ryan. Was that a product of Blackman's their system that they were able to run so well? Or, is there something in the Brentwood system that's not working without, Cade Granzow back there? Hard to say, and we'll learn a lot more. But this is not the opponent to get well against. This is the opponent that you want to be playing your best ball against. And I just think that, right now Summit is they're true believers. They've been to the mountaintop. They're still there. It's going to be a tall task for Brentwood.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, slowing down Destin Wade after what he did to Henry County in week 1, Keaton Wade's back healthy and causing havoc on defense. I mean, it's going to be a difficult challenge for Brentwood to stop those 2 or just slow them down. They're not going to stop them. They're just be able to slow them down because if you do try to stop them, then somebody else like Brady Pierce might get broken and things can get really bad in a hurry. Yeah. This game has a shootout potential to it, but Brentwood's going to have to find some consistency on offense in order to make that happen. let's get to our spotlight game of the week. Riverdale and Blackman. As Riverdale has pitched 2 shutouts to start the year. Blackman didn't get to play last week after Gallatin's COVID problems caused their cancellation. So done not a lot on Blackman except for what we saw in week 1, Tom. And Riverdale's defense has done the job. So what gives?
I tell you, Riverdale's defense has done their job, and we knew they were going to be good coming into the season. 7 of their starters returned on the defensive side of the ball. This is an experienced club. They've got a big senior class on this club this year. My concern for Riverdale is, are they too focused on Oakland that they may overlook Blackman? And they better not be, because this Blackman offense, and one thing I think is going to throw Blackman a little bit for a loop, they could not get into Coach Tiger's rhythm that he really wanted week 1 against Brentwood. And I think that's some things. Coach Tiger did everything he could to try to find a replacement game for week 2, because he wants to get that offense into a rhythm, get it ebbing and flowing. How are they going to respond after a week off that they didn't want, coming back out and trying to restart that offense? Now, with Reisner out there, Peyton Thomas, who's the backup quarterback, but he's kind of become a all-purpose weapon out there on the field. This is a team that's going to pull out all the stops offensively against anyone and everyone. That's got to scare Riverdale just a little bit, but, they're going to have to stay home. They're going to have to stay disciplined. I think it's the key of Blackman finding a rhythm offensively. Can they do that against such a good Riverdale defense?
Well, Chris, you said what gives, and I think the real question is who gives. Is it going to be the up-tempo system that Coach Taggart has got, or is it going to be Riverdale's tough defense? And it's going to be really, really interesting, to Tom's point, of if that rhythm, if Blackman can find that rhythm, can they punch holes in Riverdale's defense? The key, I think, is going to be time in the pocket for Blackman's quarterbacks. With Herring coming off the corner, if they can disrupt Blackman's offensive rhythm, then Riverdale should be okay running the ball, controlling the clock. If they can't get to him, then it's a problem.
Yep. Main thing for Blackman: score early. Don't let this thing get into the late in the first half where you're not on the board yet, because the longer this game goes and Riverdale is still pitching a shutout, the more up-tempo their defense is going to get, and they get more dangerous as the game goes on. So that's a big thing for them. They've got to be able to score early if they plan on scoring often. So we'll see if the shutout streak continues, or if Blackman does indeed end it. All right, so let's take a look at last week, guys. We have some explaining to do. Not great, Bob. Not great. Tom does have a 7-3 week to his credit last week and takes the overall lead by a game over Scott and the fans, who have a game on me. I have a lot of explaining to do. Reggie had a nice week. We're going 7-3 in his picks, and Drake is sitting at 500 with a lot of explaining to do. So,
I knew Reggie and I were close. In fact, I thought I lost the week to Reggie, but I'll take a push. That's all good.
well, you see the column on the right, the "Told You So" column. That's when you go lone wolf and win. So we'll give you an extra cookie for that.
All right, I'll take it.
on to the picks, and let's start with Beach and Hendersonville as we bring Reggie's picture in right there.
Hey, Reggie.
There's Reggie. Who did everybody pick? Well, Tom goes lone wolf with Hendersonville this week. So let's hear it.
Well, this is a game, again, a rivalry game, just one I kind of went back and forth on. And just, I don't know. Sometimes it's looking at something and getting a gut feeling about it. So I'm going to take the shot. Let's go with Hendersonville at home. It's a huge region game. The winner of this game may very well win the region. So I just always, when I take a look at a rivalry game, I just throw a lot of things out the window, and I'm just going to go with the home team this week.
I think every one of us went Beach. So, Scott, what do you got?
Well, Hendersonville's defensive front is capable of shutting down the running game for Beach and pushing him to the air. But I think that Beach is a much better throwing team than they have been in the past. If they can capitalize on turnover too, they could pull the upset. But I think Beach has a good defense, too many weapons, and don't be surprised if a special teams play doesn't break the game open for the Buccaneers.
you mentioned the passing game for Beach, and we haven't heard a lot from Jackson Long or Andrew Page yet in the first 2 weeks. This might be the week one of those two breaks out, and I'm going with Beach for that reason. BGA and CPA, and it's CPA across the board. Everybody going with the Lions in this one. I think that just BGA, I think we'll be able to keep up for a while, but the main thing is CPA's experience will take over in the second half, and I just see the Lions winning this one going away.
Yeah, I think that it's BGA has a chance, but it's a slim one. I think we'll see a lot of Law and Patterson on the ground, safe passes. I think Ingles not going to give this one away. I think he's going to try to keep this one down and avoid a shootout and try to control it.
DeKalb County at Macon County, kind of split here as Drake goes to Macon County, and so do I. I like Macon at home here just because of that little taste in their mouth from last year's loss where they got it snatched away from them in the final minute. They've run the ball really well in the first couple of weeks, and I think at home, their experience at quarterback and on the outside will make a bit of a difference here. But I won't discount DeKalb County. That's a pretty good little team. It's off to a decent start. So could be a tight one again, just like last year. But I think the Tigers are going to win regardless. But I think
exactly
the Tigers at home will pull this one out. East Nashville at Stratford. Everybody goes with East Nashville. I think East Nashville across the board.
I just think they're head and shoulders above the rest of that region right now, guys. Just to be honest, I think it's them and everybody else. It's Stratford, Smith County, Maplewood. Those guys can wrangle for 2, 3, and 4, but I think it's East Nashville's to lose.
Yep. Father Ryan at JP2, the battle for the Bishop's Cup. And Drake going with Father Ryan. Everybody else goes with JP2. I could see Father Ryan making a run at this. I mean, they've gotten off to a really good start. I do think, though, that the quarterback edge has to go to the Knights and JP2, and with Kenny Minchie there, and the experience in this rivalry will serve him well for sure.
Yeah, Father Ryan gives up a high percentage of completions. I think this is, even though this is going to be the toughest opponent so far for JP2, I think we're going to get a better idea of just how good JP2 is after this game.
On to the next 5, Independence and Centennial. 3 for Independence, and Scott, you and Reggie are siding with Centennial. Explain yourself.
I think that Independence, right now they're struggling, and I think Centennial is going to try to keep the gas on, keep the pedal down. I think to Tom's point, Josh Forsey is going to be the force in this game. It's just, I think that Centennial's playing with a lot of confidence. I think it rolls over.
I wasn't going to make you speak for Reggie, but I figured you might want to at least answer.
Meow, 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 meow. Okay. I can't go any more than that, or, I'll have to pay somebody.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think 3 seconds is the max. Smyrna at Hillsboro, and Smyrna across the board. I think even though Hillsboro's at home, then the emotion is certainly there for them. Smyrna, I think, still probably is going to come in there with some confidence that they can beat Hillsboro, seeing what happened last week against Station Camp. And I wouldn't be surprised if Smyrna does win this game. Everything okay?
Everything's good.
I was going to say, I don't think it was here.
That was me.
Somebody else I think wants to make a pick, Tom. You might want to.
Yeah, I know it. Tucker's getting jealous of Reggie. He's getting all the attention.
there. See, now the truth finally comes out.
Yeah, he's wondering how he gets some of those treats too.
Yeah. Well, Springfield Northeast and Springfield across the board here. I think we touched on that earlier. I mean, Springfield playing some pretty good ball the first couple of weeks, and Northeast coming off that shutout loss. They got to bounce back in a big way, and this is a tough team to do that against.
Yeah, I think that this is not a team you get well against. I think Springfield is just too physical, too powerful. They're too deep. I think that I think Northeast is good, but this is just not the week to try to get well.
I agree with that.
I made a mistake. Reggie actually did pick Northeast. So go ahead, Tom.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, I think you're right about everything you said there, Scott. And I tell you the truth, guys, I think Springfield's got a legit shot to win that region against Henry County. I think they've looked really good so far.
Yep. Summit at Brentwood, we touched about that one just a short time ago, and we've all going with the Spartans in this one. Destin Wade, I think, will have another big night, and Brentwood's going to have a hard time controlling Keaton Wade, and they're going to find ways to get him freed up on the defensive side, even if they have to be creative. So I like Summit in their region opener, Brentwood, and everybody else does too. That brings us to Riverdale and Blackman. And 4 of us made the pick so far. And Scott, you went with Blackman. I want to hear from you before we get Reggie's pick.
Well, I think that Blackman has a really good shot at this game. I think Tom brought up that Riverdale's got their eye on the Oakland game, maybe. But I think that Blackman, with a week to prepare, that they, if they can get on the board early, I think they stand a good chance of breaking that Riverdale. And that Blackman defense isn't terrible. It isn't terrible. I think that they have a chance to kind of break Riverdale's back just a little bit.
All right, so there's yours. And now let's get Reggie's pick.
And Reggie's going up here, and he is going to select. Which one has he gone for? He has gone for the Blue Cup, which is Blackman High School. So Reggie takes Blackman over Riverdale. Reg, you have anything to say? Yeah, we're the treats.
He's a cat of few words.
Yep. So with Reggie's Blackman pick, let's review them real quick on the screen. Hendersonville for you, Tom. Everybody else with Beach. All 5 of us took CPA. Drake and I are going with Macon County. Others with DeKalb County. East Nashville is a across-the-board pick for everybody. Drake goes with Father Ryan. The rest of us with Pope John Paul II. Scott and Reggie take Centennial. The rest of us with Independence. We've all picked Smyrna over Hillsboro. Reggie goes with Northeast over Springfield. The others side with the Yellow Jackets. Summit gets all 5 of our picks, and Reggie and Scott take Blackman, while the others have Riverdale. That's the picks for week 3, so let's see if we can do a little better this time around. Guys, let's real quickly get one last word in before we head out.
Well, guys, I tell you, week 3, starting the region campaign, and this is when it really starts. I know a lot of folks will refer to weeks 1 and 2 as the preseason, but I think weeks 1 and 2 have been very interesting thus far. That's COVID aside. Of course, we hope we're not going to see this all throughout the season. Hopefully, the numbers may be bad here to start with, but we all hope and pray it's going to be better as we go throughout the season. But the games do mean a little bit more because they do count toward the playoff race, and every region game counts for something. You want to get at least one home playoff game, so you're fighting to get to at least second place. And guys, we've already got a lot of matchups this week I think could determine region championships. So it's been exciting already. I think it steps it up to another level this week.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, Tom, you brought up the COVID issue. That makes these region games that much more critical, depending on if a team has to, they don't lose, but if they have to give up a COVID win to a region opponent. So I think that these games that are being played right now are absolutely critical for some of these teams. That being said, I think that, it's a good week for football. We got some really good matchups, and I'm really excited.
The thing that I'm taking away from week 2, especially, is some of the teams that are stepping up and playing really good ball the first couple of weeks. You got your Centennials, your Station Camps, your Rockvales, your Seagulls that have been kind of off to a good start and trying to build on that momentum going into week 3. This is where it gets real for them. Their schedules may or may not have been good the first couple of weeks. They have to earn it now, and we're going to see where those teams are when we hit week 3, 5, 7, and 9, these region weeks throughout the season. So the biggest thing for me going into week 3 is how do some of these teams respond to these really good starts with games that really count now? And that's the biggest thing I'm going to have for week 3. Guys, let's bring us back in. That's all we've got for the Midstate 48 this week. We needed a little bit of overtime to get there, but hey, sometimes it happens. For Scott Burton, for Tom Duggan, I'm Chris Brooks. Thanks for watching and listening to the Midstate 48 powered by 615 Preps, where we try to get you ready for Friday in 48 minutes or less. Hopefully next week we'll be able to do that.
Yeah, don't wager on
it. See y'all next week.